Hello, and a pleasant welcome to another episode of Perfect Tips for Perfect Success. As we've mentioned numerous times, our aim is to share our path, share our stories, and just hope that the lessons we've learned along the way benefit you as you pursue your path. I have with me today a lady from across the Caribbean. She's well known, she's an international speaker. She's no stranger to Belize. She visited several times. And I met her when she participated in the 20,000 strong women's march during the 16 days of activism. And I think we are within those days right now as we speak. And so how apt to have her with us. I'll let Cecile introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does. Welcome, Cecile.
Thank you for inviting me, Deidre. It is a pleasure to be here. So, as you said, my name is Cecile Watson. I am an entrepreneur. I started my career as an engineer. I became a banker. And now I am in this space in my latter years where I am not only working as a data protection entrepreneur. I have a business called ShredWiz, and we do document destruction as well as helping companies to build more robust cyber resilience. But I also work with leaders, especially women, to grow and scale their business, helping in areas such as strategy, corporate governance, operations effectiveness, etc. So I was originally back in 2014, I was named the Women's Entrepreneurship Day Ambassador for the region, recruited women across the region to do that. And that led me into the opportunity that you spoke about, Deidre, where I had the opportunity to come to Belize and participate as a keynote speaker for the 20,000 march. One of the great experiences in this journey for me. That was really a powerful experience.
It indeed was, Cecile, because what you said at that march still resonates to me today. And I will give you a chance to just talk about that word that you used repeatedly in your presentation. You kept talking about being relevant. And I ask you to talk about that whole issue of being relevant, because I see your path of starting as an engineer and then moving into the banking field. And now with being an entrepreneur, an international speaker, and how you maintain relevance across these career paths and the advice or the lessons that you garnered as to why that terminology that you really hearkened for us at that presentation is so important.
Yes, so the title of my presentation was Woman, Thou Art Relevant. And when I spoke to the 20,000 women who were there, I was also speaking to myself. That came out of let's say, a part of my journey where I had been dismissed as the head of a public sector entity. And it was quite a public dismissal, and it was no cause. You know how these things go. And I went through that space or that period of reflecting on my journey and what could I have done differently? Should I have gone to that entity? You know, what caused that to manifest at a time when, you know, there was no question in competence, there was no question in terms of delivering the objectives, there was no question in terms of performance generally. And thankfully, you know, the history will speak for itself, because the persons who came to my defense, you know, showed that there was really no cause. Having said that, when these things inflict you, you have to dig deep. I had to tell myself that I was still relevant. I took a position at that time that having experienced such a hurtful situation, I was not prepared to work for anybody anymore. But when you suffer through such a situation, you start to question yourself. And I realized in my reflection, I went deep, I talked to my God, and I realized in my reflection that every one of us is relevant. The persons who manage to cause this thing to happen, to me, they're relevant. But I also chose not to be a victim. I chose to overcome the situation. I chose to define myself as opposed to letting others define me. So I went back to basics and I went back to, okay, who are you? What do you like doing? What can you do to serve the world better at this time? And that took me through this journey. I said, I've been in the corporate world. I know how to run businesses. There are a whole suite of women out there who, because of gender, are disenfranchised. I have a daughter myself, not so young anymore, but and I wanted to contribute into the lives of women. That journey made me realize that the difference between serving as a woman and serving as a man, and the types of, let's say, what you have available to draw on when you run into these types of situations. We don't have lodges. We as women don't come together as we should to empower each other and support each other. So I had to learn it, and I had to do it, and I had to walk the talk.
So Cecile, I listened to you, and you made me reflect on my own experiences. When my first child was very young, I worked for the government for a period of time. And then I came home and I didn't have a job. I didn't have any plans. But there was a lot of political upheaval within the political party for which was the ruling party at the time. And I quickly learned that having been affiliated with that party, there was a bit of what I call a stink that had washed off on me, and then my own personal experiences. Back then I chose to burrow. And I began by burrowing as a mother. My daughter was starting preschool, and it was a good excuse to be completely a part of that. And then a friend said to me, well, you don't have to hurry back to work. You have marketable skills, and introduced consulting to me. And that was another perfect experience to burrow, because you could choose what you wanted to be involved in. And I just found I kept burrowing deeper and deeper, and it got very comfortable. I went back into the work environment, and it wasn't the most pleasant experience, and it affirmed again for me to burrow. But you can only burrow for so long, and so you have to come out to do what you needed to do. And I made several attempts to come out and get back into the work world. And then most recently, last year was probably one of the most powerful experiences for me. And again, I had to figure out how I was going to navigate this after I walked away. And this time I decided I didn't want to burrow. But I had gotten so comfortable to burrow that, I didn't even publicize where I was working before unless I was forced to, and unless people learned about it by happenstance. But this time when I came out, I had to contend with what you talked about. Am I going to let them define me? Or am I going to define myself for who I am and who I know myself to be? And so I searched and I looked at it, and I took the lessons from it that I could learn and that I thought was fair and objective. And the rest of it, I just worked to push away and said, that's not me. And I know that that's not who I am, and I'm not going to take that on. So that's an interesting thing. And I want to just let you talk a little bit more about what that struggle is to not let things and persons define you, because I think it could be very important for young women who are trying to find their way and navigate their way in what can be very competitive and at times very mean.
Yes, and it is, you're right, it's very relevant for women, young women, as well as older women, because we grew in different eras. And certainly the younger women today have a lot more sense of self-awareness. So they're less likely to let people define them. but they can also benefit from learning from those who have gone before and understand the dynamics of engaging, whether it's as a woman entrepreneur or in the corporate world. We who have been there before have seen the plays. We did not have the benefit of others who would say, this is the playbook, this is how you move through it. There are some who have benefited from mentors, and there were male mentors. So the men have one level of perspective. Women have a totally different, because when we experience it, we know it in a different way. For me personally, my faith was very pivotal to that whole story. I remember right after it happened, at first my attitude was, oh, this is nothing, this will go away, they'll soon figure it all out. And my helper at the time said to me, Mrs. Watson, God would not bring you here unless he wanted to make something of this for you. The thing to do, and this is coming from my helper, she is relevant to, right? And she said, the thing to do is figure out what God wants you to be right now. And I started, that to me was game changing. That to me was like, you mean I'm here? This is not happening to me. This is happening for me. And I started searching then to figure out what was meant for this period of my life. Now, I had to change a lot of things, because November 8th this year, I said it was 7 years since I've had a paycheck. But I've written my own paychecks, put it that way. I had to ask myself, okay, how do I go through this period? Because the first thing you look at, you say, okay, do I have enough money? How am I going to manage? I still have a mortgage to pay. All those fears start to trickle up to the top. And fortunately, being a person who is very adept with finance, I have more than the normal rudiments of financial understanding. I have a level of literacy that helps me. And so I knew that I had enough of a bandwidth, I had enough runway not to let that fear control me. And therefore, that this was a very, I saw it as a season where I said, how often are you going to get the opportunity to be paid while you don't have to turn up for work? Because it was a period of interdiction at one point. And I set up with the intention to use that period wisely. I was being paid and I did not have to work for anybody but myself. And I think a lot of that came from the soul searching and the strong seeking of God for guidance. And that takes me through. So when your question in terms of how do you stay grounded and anchored, it is to come into the understanding that we are all born for a purpose. We're all here to do something. We can choose that something, or we can enable that something by reflecting on the things that come into our space. What have we experienced? Nothing is by chance. Some of our most turbulent situations are here to guide us into a new understanding and a renewal that serves not just ourselves, but serve others. I'm sure there are many women out there who have been terminated from jobs. I know there will be many more who are terminated unjustly as well. And they need to understand that they do not need to buckle under the pressure. I am not saying that it is not difficult. I am saying is to seek an understanding of who you are and make some take a determined stance that you will not let those who have victimized you, you will not become a victim to them. So that in all, when I was journeying through this, I came into a new understanding of the word respect. When in the past I used to think of when they say you don't have any self-respect, that you carry yourself loosely as a woman or whatever. But I have come to understand that self-respect is about choosing to do the things that do not diminish you. Any that time you entertain thoughts or you do things that deplete you, you're not respecting yourself. You're saying I'm less than. And I get up every day and I fight for myself. I fight for myself because I know God is fighting for me and he wants me to win. And because of all that, it keeps me going. I know that, you know, people tell me all the time, oh, I love your brain. At first, I used to find that quite insulting. I used to get annoyed at that, actually. But I've come to embrace it. So, okay, I have a great brain. Thank you, God, for that too. How do I use it now? How do I use it to serve you? How do I use it to serve my community? And so in this season is less about me and it's more about the people who I'm here to serve, who can learn from my experiences, who can be guided through the tough things that I've experienced in life, and who can benefit from the knowledge, the experience, the connections that I have been fortunate enough to have, you know. Yeah, go on.
Strong experiences, I won't say negative experiences, from strong pointed experiences comes great paths. And you chose to collect a salary from yourself for 7 years. What is that like? Let's celebrate that with what does that feel like?
Well, to begin with, it feels very poor because you're, you know, you don't collect the salary you're accustomed to, you know. You're fighting for every dollar. You're out there trying to innovate and, you know, so for many years, I started off, I started a crowdfunding platform for the region. And frankly, I just invested in that. I didn't get the returns in terms of monetary gain. I got the satisfaction of seeing projects in the Caribbean funded. I got the satisfaction of having been engaged as to coach women entrepreneurs over the region in terms of how to crowdfund. And so out of that experience, I rejigged my metrics. It wasn't about the money I was earning. It was about the contributions that were coming about because I made this contribution. I made this investment, whether it was my money or my time, the innovation of crowdfunding for the region. So for many years, I lived off my savings. I have to admit to that. And there's no shame in that because if I did not have the understanding of how to build savings back then, I probably would have been in a dark and dire place. So after that, in this season now, I started the Shredwiz, which is pretty much we do document destruction. I invested, I've been bootstrapping that. And the good thing about that is not having bank loans, etc. You can weather the hills and the valleys, okay? So when I paid myself for the very first time this year, just after COVID struck, which is interesting. And what I paid myself did not even amount to what I used to pay for one statutory emolument, you know? So it really was, but it was a sense of celebration. It was like, I paid myself. Oh, this is great. Having taken the stance to pay myself, I double my salary the next month. So it really is, I think for me anyway, my values of the money is different. This season is not just about the money that comes in. It's also about the innovation, the contributions of pouring into each other's other people's lives. And of course it is about earning enough to keep me because, as I like to say, I'm pretty high maintenance, you know, my chest is pretty high. I like nice things, right? And I am accustomed eating and I like to be able to do that, continue doing that. So I also do project work on the side. I do consulting with companies and I do some coaching with some leaders to help them. And that kind of keep things on balance and helps me to continue to pay myself.
Well, you started a series, and there's this theme of helping others and teaching by your experience resonates all through. Even in the series that you recently started, I watched the first episode, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about that and why that. What are you hoping to accomplish or for people to gain from that?
Okay, so that's ladiesspeaking.com. And what that is an online forum where we reach out to influential women of the Caribbean, wherever they are in the world, to come together in a central space. We meet the second Sunday of every month at 4 p.m. EST. And the intention there is we're empowering ladies through inspiring conversations that encourage confidence. So by hearing the stories of women just like ourselves, whether it's in the corporate world, whether it is as entrepreneurs, etc., we have Caribbean women who are all over the world doing amazing stuff. They have broken through barriers that were once thought impossible. For instance, the next Sunday we have Pamela Coke Hamilton. She is the executive director of the ITC, that's a UN body. And I mean, who would have thought that was even possible? And so that's on December 13th. So the whole idea of the forum is, the vision is that we connect Caribbean women for good.
Your advice and your go-to lessons are strong, and they're coming out in everything you do. And there may be some that look at this and said, but you know something, they still have a leg up above me. They have their education. They have the opportunities that they've already lived and shared in. And with that, they're a step ahead of me. I don't have that level of education. I don't have that support network around me where people are exposed and able to bolster me. I don't have any connections to draw on. What do you say to those who feel that those intangibles are just not there, but intangibles, but valuable are just not there? What do we say to them that for them to be able to pick up and put themselves on those paths?
Yeah, you know, it is, the truth of the story is that not everyone will be in a good place every time. All of us go through hills and valleys. And I reflect on my grandmother. My grandmother, she was in Barbados, you would call her a hawker, because I'm from Barbados originally. She sold mobby, you know, tray on her head. She had 3 children to educate. She started by borrowing to get a machine from her husband's employer, got the money to go and buy a sewing machine. She made these belts that you would wrap around your waist. She went out with that tray on her head with the to the cane fields to help people to wrap themselves to the, you know, in those days the men used to, with all the heavy lifting, used to have to support the back. So these were these belts that you wrap around for that support. Then she made the little boxer shorts. She found ways to earn an income. It wasn't easy. I would imagine the sun was hot. She had to walk long distances to do it, but she was able to educate her children, and her children were able to educate their children. So I think it would be a false narrative to say to everyone, it happens in your time. But you have to have the sense, it goes back to that story of being relevant. We're sewing into each other. My helper who said to me, God would not want you to go through this unless there's something in it for you. She sewed into me. My helper today, who is able to come and help support me so that I'm not washing, cooking, cleaning, and trying to run a business all at the same time, which is so overwhelming. I know I felt it, and therefore have had to rely on that support. I build her up. I let her know that I love her. I let her know how important she is to what I am doing. And I know that as I thrive, so will she. And so my story to women generally is to understand that No man is an island. No man stands alone. And it's not about hoarding everything that you have. It's about sharing and helping those around you to be empowered, because that is empowering to you as well. Even to this day, every Saturday I use as my learning day. I learn something new. There's so much education out there that we can draw on. But sometimes it just comes down to knowing who you're going to support to be successful, because your success actually lies in that as well. And that's also relevant with if you're an employee. Some people go through their careers thinking that they're working for somebody. You're working for yourself. You are working, even as an employee, you're working for yourself. You are there, you have the opportunity to learn, you have the opportunity to be trained on somebody else's nickel, and you have the opportunity to connect with other people who can become very important to you down the road. Leverage those connections, be good to people. It will come back to you in multiples. So shit down, pressed together, running over. It will come back. So the whole message about woman thou art relevant is to understand that wherever you are in your journey, you are relevant to someone.
I love that message. We started out talking about finding your relevance, finding conviction in your experiences that prepares you for your new path, being very soul searching and tapping into who you know you are and what you're capable of doing. And even in your definition of your path, finding space to help others and to help others define, encouraging yourself, encouraging others, and the circular benefit of all that experience, and staying true to the journey, and finding value in that journey. It's been an interesting conversation, Cecile, and I want to give you an opportunity to tell people what's coming up next with Cecile Watson, and where can you find Cecile to just share in that positive energy that I feel in this conversation.
Okay, so I am on most social media channels at WatSoCec. That's WATSOCEC. That's my surname, my maiden and my first name kind of combined. So that's on Instagram, that's on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook, but you have to find me on the Be Financially Empowered. That's the Facebook tag. And also ladiesspeaking.com, which is right now my baby. I'm growing that, and you'll always be able to connect in terms of what is happening there. What's next for Cecile? That's anybody's guess. You know, I didn't know Ladies Speaking was going to happen. I just listened to the inspiration. I tried to push it away because I thought I have no time for this right now. I can't commit a budget to doing this, etc. But I kept hearing the edging, I kept hearing the urging, and I said, okay, God, I hear you. I'm not going to be that Jonah guy. I'm going to do this. So I'm doing that now. And I really work with inspiration. What's coming to me, what I'm hearing, what is confirmed, what is being repeated.
Well, thank you very much for our share, Cecile. I know it's been a short time and there's so much that we can cover. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. We hope that what we've shared is of value to you, and we ask you to follow Cecile Watson, reach out, seek her out for her specialty and her talents. And I ask you to support Perfect Green Belize and to keep looking out for perfect tips for perfect success, where we share a little bit of us to benefit you. Thank you. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.